Chair and Ranking Member Toomey, and thanks to all of our panelists today. So I start from the place that if you don't have a safe, decent, affordable place to live, nothing else in your life works. Not your job, not your education, not your health, nothing. And as Ms. Melinda said so well, when you lose your home, you lose more than just that. You lose your community. And that is why this hearing is so important. It seems to me, Mr. Chair, that our system is failing way too many people who are being victimized by these big corporate and institutional private equity landlords. And on Tuesday, as you said, we heard some stories about what this really means in the lives of people. I'm including Rachel, who's a single mother in North Minneapolis, who had to sign her lease as she was leaving an abusive relationship. And Rachel shared her own experience with this institutional landlord: flooded basement and with an unsafe electrical hazard in it, a garage torn down because it was unsafe, and other significant problems. And she told us how it was impossible, nearly impossible, to get anyone to pay attention to what she needed to have happen. Now, Rachel isn't alone. In the city of Minneapolis, we have found dozens of violations of city ordinances in homes owned by this large landlord. By one estimate, 58% of homes had code violations. In nearby Columbia Heights, the problems were so bad that the city revoked the landlord's rental license. Now, Rachel's rental is owned by a firm called Pretium, a large private equity fund, which acquired this portfolio last year. Pretium tells me that they are committed to fixing these problems, and they're going to do away with some of these onerous lease terms, and they need to meet their commitments to me. And I'm going to make sure that there is accountability here. But in the meantime, this speaks, of course, to a larger problem that we have in our nation. We are seeing increased corporate consolidation in a lot of sectors of our economy, in food, we're seeing that driving up food prices, heating prices, and now rent prices. And this is happening because these big out-of-state firms, out-of-town firms, driven by Wall Street expectations, are buying homes by the thousand, with the single-minded goal of driving up profits and turning these properties into cash cows. Now, I went to business school, and I know what cash cow means. It means that you maximize cash spin-off while you minimize investment and maintenance. And we know who wins and loses in this deal when it comes to tenants. So I want to ask a question around this topic to Mr. Waller and also to Ms. Martin. You have both been involved in the housing sector for a lot of years. Can you help us understand a little bit how these big institutional investors are turning these properties into cash cows and what impact that has on tenants? For example, what are you seeing in terms of the different experiences between tenants who are tenants of these big out-of-state cash cow investors versus local landlords? What are you seeing as some of the differences?
What I've seen in my work is that these landlords tend to not have a lot of empathy for tenants. So things will break in the house. Things will the basement will flood, for instance. The tenant will need a plumbing repair. It will not be done, or it will take months and months for the tenant to get relief. So again, this speaks to the need for code enforcement as being a critical tool in code prosecution. But again, it's very hard to find them. They typically employ local property managers that are very hard to pin down, and they hide behind the corporate veil, making it very, very difficult. But they do milk properties, as you stated. That is what is going on. They buy them for the lowest possible price. They try to put nothing into them and milk them for all the rent they can get.
And let me just ask, following up on this to Mr. Waller, so large institutional investors in housing, do you think that that has a downward trend on rents, or do you think it has an upward trend on rents? What's your
It's either.
What we've observed in Georgia is that these institutional landlords are well known for driving up rent, the cost of rent. In fact, year on and year on. But it's not just the rents. I also think it's important to note that there are fee schemes that are imposed that we haven't seen and we don't see with other types of landlords. These are very creative fees that can cost tenants a tremendous amount of money. There's one example: an Atlanta Legal Aid Society lawyer reported that her client had her lease payment was $1,300, I think, and $73 under the lease. But with the accumulated fees, it was $2,157 per month. That's a 60% increase. And so you can imagine what that does to tenants over time.
This is the kind of predatory behavior that I think is so damaging to a housing market that is already struggling because we have a shortage of supply, as we all acknowledge. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for this hearing, and I look forward to our continued work on this issue.
Thank you, Senator Smith. Senator Toomey has one question he wants to ask, and then I will turn it to Senator Warnock.